Today, we will be talking about making 808s from scratch. There's tons of plugins available and sample packs and all that kind of stuff. But really, this is one of the easiest sounds you can make yourself and have a ton of control over. So if you can't get things to really sound right through some sample pack or it's not really working, you can just get in the kitchen here and cook up your own. I think that's tremendously exciting, right? So let's talk 808s. It's like a bass sound, right? It's going to interact with your kick drum a lot. This is what gives, this could give a track a lot of the power and excitement, right? That people want, especially in like a club situation. It's nice to hear this stuff over a big system. So let's talk about, kind of what you need and what variables are in play with these things and what makes them good, what makes them not good, all that kind of stuff, right? So just to study this a little bit, I have a bunch of 808 samples already synced up here in a spectrum analyzer, so we can see what's actually happening with these things, right? So here's one, right? Here's another very low fundamental here. This one is a little easier to hear, right? This one, once you get down in the 30s, I feel like unless you have a crazy sound system, that might not reproduce so well, especially if there's no higher spectrum activity, right? All right, this is a different one, right? Because we have this low fundamental, right? And then some higher overtones. This is good. This helps us hear it, on less than optimal circumstances where we don't have a beautiful subsystem that goes down to 20 hertz, right? All right, here's a different one with a different envelope. This sustains a little bit longer before it falls off, but all right, this is a growly one. Love it. You see lots of overtone activity above 100 hertz all the way up to 1K, right? But then we have our low fundamental, right? Same thing here. We could see all the little spikes where our higher harmonics are in addition to our fundamental, right? This is a cool one, fundamental with some noise on top. You could hear kind of like almost like vinyl noise. It sounds like they spliced in, right? Pretty simple one. All right. So that's a couple just for reference to see what we can actually make. So your big things with an 808 that you want to focus on are you're going to have a low fundamental below 100 hertz most likely. Usually it just starts out with a simple sine wave, just a low sine wave. That's all an 808 is at its core, right? So we're going to need something that's going to be able to make that, right? Then we're going to need to shape that sine wave with the envelope. So we're going to have to start it at a certain volume and taper it off to get it out of the way, right? So we need to be able to do that. And then we need a couple techniques for introducing some higher harmonics, right? Because that's what's going to give it the color of the 808. That's what gives it that feeling of like, oh, this is really growly, or this knocks, or this is really clean, whatever that's going to be. So we need to be able to add some higher energy kind of stuff in the upper frequencies. We're going to need to be able to control pitch. That's another important variable, right? Because 808s, kind of what makes them feel cool a lot of the time is the pitch drop on the individual notes, right? Because that kind of mimics how a real bass drum would work, as well as the glide between different different notes, right? Where all that like ooh, right, all that kind of stuff. Like I have an example of that prepared, right? Right? Ooh, all that kind of stuff, right? So we have to control pitch in two ways: individual notes and then between notes, right? And then we're gonna get into a couple other techniques that we can apply depending on what your gear setup is like. But as long as you can control those couple variables, right? You can totally synthesize this stuff on your own. If you want to make an 808 pack, right? You could do that. You'd be equipped because again, it's a simple sound. So anyway, let's just start right over here. Right, I have a fresh instance of operator, which is One of the places I'm going to be starting, we can talk about how to use simpler or sampler as well. Um, so let's just begin here, right? So first of all, um, how we start, I turned all the other oscillators off. I just have one. It's set to a sine wave, right? You can see over here, it's making one pure sine wave with no harmonics, right? Um, and I'll have an envelope, right? So it's going to start and then trail off. This is what that sounds like. Actually, let me undo this so you can see all the steps too, right? So super boring, right? Not a tremendously exciting sound yet. All it's doing is playing a sine wave and then letting it decay along this curve, right? If we shorten this up, right, we can control the length. If we want a super long sound, we just bring the decay out. So let's keep this about here at 3 seconds, 3.4. Okay, fine, that's cool. All right, so the next parameter I want to introduce, right, is the individual pitch drop. Like so, on a real drum, like if you hit a bass drum with skins on it, right, the beater smacks into the skin and it gets tighter when that happens, and then it relaxes as it resonates, right? So because it's getting tighter, the pitch is going to go up and then come down a little bit, right? So we can mimic that, right, with the pitch envelope. Right here, I have this set up to do, there's an initial pitch raise of an octave, right? And then in the sustain portion, the flat part, it's going to go down to the center, right? Whatever it is. So no transposition, right? So if I start to introduce this pitch envelope, here now it's going like doo. And again, we can change the decay portion, right, to control how quick it settles in to that fundamental pitch. I don't want to transpose this. I just want the time to change, right? So if I make this decay time long, it really takes a minute before it settles in, which maybe is what you want, right? It's going to depend on what you're writing, for sure. Right, but for now, let me keep this at like 500-ish. Right, and again, if I can control kind of the degree that this envelope is affecting the sound with this knob here, So through changing the decay time, also you could I like an octave because it's like a nice clean interval. But if you wanted to say, hey, let me make this, I don't want it to start a full octave above. Like maybe we just want a little bit, like 4 half steps. That works too, right? But that's really the main thing, is you need some way to control how quick the pitch settles in, right? So I'm gonna put this back to an octave, and then maybe 60% of the pitch envelope in here. All right. But the next thing, if you're doing this and trying to replicate it on operator or different synths, you might have this problem. If stuff is bleeding over, right? First of all, you don't want that in your bass frequencies because that's going to muddy up everything, right? You want to make sure that the sound or the synthesizer you're working with is set to monophonic, so one voice. You only want it to play one note at a time, right? So now if I do that, if I hit a new note, the old one gets cut off. That's what we want, because it's going to keep your lows super clean, especially when you have a fundamental down at 50 hertz or 60 hertz, right? There's really only space in your lows for like one thing to happen at a time, right? So you can't have a ton of overlap. It's already enough of a battle to get your kick drum and your 808 playing well together. You do not want a multi-voice 808 sound. It doesn't make any sense. It's gonna be a mud generator, right? So anyway, now that we have our sine wave, we have our pitch our pitch envelopes, kind of getting it to settle in, right? We only have one note at a time. The next feature is a second pitch component. It's the glide, right? Like if we come down here and play this, that, right? Right, like that glide between notes, right? You're gonna have to cook that up, right? In operator, there's just a button, right, that lets you turn on glide. Other synths, have some equivalent of this or a glide feature. Generally, you're gonna need to turn that on and then set a time, right? At 115 milliseconds. Let me unmute this. Now, if I hit one key and then another one, we're gonna hear a slide between them. Right, but then if I wait and hit another note, now we get the full attack, right? So that's separate. So we're getting two separate notes, but if I hold down the first key and hit another one, now we hear it slide up there, right? Let me do it in a higher octave in case you're listening on a phone, right? Some of these super low frequencies aren't gonna sound great if you're on a phone, so I'd recommend like earbuds or speakers if you have them. The phone speaker is not great for lows. But anyway, if that's what you're listening on, here it is. Right, we hear that glide now. Okay, cool. So we have that, right? These are now you're getting to something that's basically like the 808 kind of sound. And for what you're making, this might even be enough, right? And then from here, like if you wanted to just make like a sample for yourself, like I would take this, duplicate it, right? And I would play a little bit, right? So check this out. Oh shit, I just want this one. Sorry guys. All right, try again. Take two. That's probably enough. All right. So now if I take this, freeze, and flatten, right? Now I have a couple 808 samples that don't look super far off from one of these, right? All right, so this is like the basic 808 sound. It's just a sine wave with some pitch automation. That's it, right? Now, this is also not the most tremendously exciting sound, right? This thing up here. It's also not going to be super clear, again, if you're listening on a phone or, something that doesn't have that super low response. It also doesn't have a lot of color to it yet, right? It's just like super clean, right? So if that's not what you want, let's talk about how to get those really like rambunctious sounds, right? So how you introduce color to something like this is you have to add the other higher elements, right? A really common one is with distortion, right? This is the first thing that most people are going to go to, right? So this is just the stock Ableton saturator plugin. You can really use any distortion plugin, just anything that's gonna add higher harmonics. All right, so now just dropping some distortion in, putting some drive on it. Right, now we have a sound that's getting closer to some kind of 808 thing that's maybe a little more functional because, again, if we drop, let me put an analyzer on this so you can actually see it, right? If we take this away, right, really all we're getting is this. All this stuff that falls away real quick is, not really hearable stuff. This is what I'm hearing though, this one fundamental. If we put distortion in, now we have some very clear overtones, right? And we can adjust this a little bit depending on what we want. We can play with different distortion modes. Okay. this into something that makes a little more sense for our tune or whatever sound that you're going for, right? So there's that, right? And then if we're going to be staying within the synth, the other thing we can do if you're like, this isn't really hitting hard enough yet. I want it to be a little bit more aggressive, right? We can start adding other things at the front end of the note, at the kind of the attack portion, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just flip this mode, this synthesizer over. So these oscillators are running in parallel. So we have our fundamental, our sine wave here, right? And then alongside it, it's gonna play another sound. And in a second, I'll show you how to do this with samples, right? But just still staying within the synth, right? What I'm gonna do is instead of another sine wave, I'm gonna actually do a triangle waveform, right? So I just bring this level up. Let me turn this off for a sec. So this is our second oscillator, right? I'm gonna change the envelope instead of a sustained sound. You see how already, since it's a triangle wave, there's some overtones here, right? We're gonna make this function just at the front here. And I'm actually going to make this a fixed wave, right? Alright, we're just trying to influence the front here. And this is going to be the same no matter what, what key I hit, because it's a fixed wave. But the point of this is to just introduce like a little bit more of a transient kind of activity right now. When you just have a pure sine wave, there's no transient action. So we want something that's shorter than this, right? Like here it is with it. Here it is. And we want to play with the frequency until we find something that kind of that sits well with our original thing. Alright, that's hitting a little harder, which is great. There it is with. Alright, you can play around with kind of the shape of this. So this is just kind of adding, you hear that? This is adding like a tap at the front of things. And that's the kind of thing with the distortion, it might help cut through the mix a little bit better. Let me just try this. The other option, right, is instead of running these oscillators in parallel, I can actually modulate the next oscillator with this thing, right? So now I have a real clear tap at the front of this. Right, okay, so anyway, that's that. This is all working within the synth, right? Again, this might be enough. You just play around with some distortion, adding some coloration, right? The next thing you can do, right, is we can get into splicing something like this together with acoustic samples, right? Now there's a lot of ways you could do this, right? So one thing I could do is group this all into a rack and make another chain next to it. I'm going to actually just use some samples so we can see how that workflow looks in addition to the technique. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this off, right? And I'm going to put this on my rack in a second. We're back to just our 808, right? Super clean, right? And I'm actually going to take this noise out. So we're back to just our basic sine wave, right? And let me just record some of this. Did it again. I'm going to do it over here so I don't hear my beat I made. Here we go. Sorry. All right. Let's get a couple of these. Oops, fix that later. Alright, so there's that. Let me just get rid of that extra note I hit like a dummy. Okay, cool. So we have that. Is there something else I wanted to do? Oh yeah. Then also I could get a couple samples of this. It's always good to get a couple different length too. So let's do that. That way we have options. Because we're gonna flatten these into samples, and then use a strictly sample related workflow, right? For the second half of this video here. Let's get a couple different pitches just so I have some options. Alright, cool. So that should be good. Now I am going to freeze and flatten. Oh yeah, so now we have plenty of different length, different pitch, 808 samples, super clean, right? Now I'm going to make a new track. Let's see. From here, I'm going to drag in, let's use simpler, because not everybody has that. Oh wait, I need a new MIDI track. My bad. Alright, cool. What is it? Don't need this right now. Okay, cool. So we're going to take this. Let's just chop that out. Crop. Alright. Alright. So now here's some of this stuff demonstrated in a sample-based workflow, and we're actually going to go a little bit further, right? So we're back to that problem of multi-voice stuff. So just remember, we have to come to the number of voices and make that 1, right? And then we're gonna have to reset up our glide controls in here. So here we're gonna go to our pitch envelope, right? I'm gonna make this an octave. Right? So this is our individual, put this around 500 again. This is our individual pitch envelope, right? And the beauty with this approach is, like, if you could just go and get a single clean 808 sample off the internet somewhere, drop it into a sampler, and then get to kind of the same place, right? I don't need this, I don't need this. Alright, we need to set our glide, right? Alright, so then now we're kind of back to where we were, but inside a sampler, or a simpler instrument, not a full-on synth, right? Now let's grab a distortion plugin. Maybe let's get a different one, just for the heck of it. I can use this pedal thing instead. Yeah, this Ableton pedal plugin is great, by the way. Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah, it gets very savage, very quick. I like it. Alright, and then there's like a nice wet dry. Alright, so cool. So now we're taking our sampled 808 version, distorting it here, but now back to my original thing of like how to make this thing hit harder, right? What we're gonna do is you're gonna have your 808, your pitched portion here, with your distortion, right? Already sounded pretty good. Now, what you do is you just drop in another sampler on a different chain. We're gonna rename this to, call this 808. And then we're gonna put in, call this kick, right? And now we're gonna try a couple samples. I'll change this to one voice too. We're gonna try a bunch of kick samples. Just drop them in and see how we can get it to play well with our 808, right? Let me see if I can find. Not sure what I want yet. Okay, this is maybe good. That's not. I'm just looking for something short with some noise, maybe like an acoustic kind of sound. That's not really a kick sound, is it? Huh? Okay, let's try this. This is like an acoustic kick. Let me just work on this guy for a little bit. So I'm gonna just filter out some of the top. Can add a little more dirt into this. Might even transpose this down. Let me get the analyzer on this just to see exactly where this is hitting. Alright, this is good. This is what we want. There's like a bunch of overtone activity that's going to help it hit. We can even shape this with our amplitude envelope. I didn't like how long it's kind of ringing. Because I want this... Basically, the reason we're splicing in an acoustic sample is we want this to hit harder at the front to add some transient activity. And then the 808 sound we synthesize is going to take over in the back part of it. Alright, and we could play around with the transposition. Let's find a nice punchy spot. Alright, so we have a fundamental right here around 40 Hertz, which is pretty low. That's going to help. Cool. Alright, so now we're adding, again, some distortion to this guy just to help this guy cut. Again, I might decide on the decay time how long I actually want this to be. I probably won't want the full shebang here, but we'll see. So let's put them together. That's working nice, right? So that's it without that kick sample. If we add it in, now it has a lot more center to it. It knocks harder, right? I'm actually going to make this... I don't like how the top end is jumping out, right? So I'm actually going to pull this back a little bit on our acoustic kick. Yeah, this is better. Okay. I also like to check kind of the center frequencies of where things are hitting to make sure they're not on top of each other. So, okay, this is around here. Let's check out the 808 on a C. Alright, good. So this is above it, right? It's kind of out of the way. Let me try and check another note. So if I play a G, that's hitting around, it's swooping in around 100, and then on my kick, alright, this is riding below it. So this is what we want, right? They're not going to be totally on top of each other, and our kick is getting out of the way pretty fast. Because again, we just want to avoid too much crowding in the low end. Alright. And then you could even decide, like, do you want to just be distorting this 808, or we could put this distortion after it? I kind of like that better. Just fuzzing up the whole thing. Might actually turn glide on for this kick, not that, because when I'm playing a gliding note, I don't want another attack. Yeah, So this now, if I do this, it's going to shut it up. So I hear just the 808 glide. Yeah, this is nice. So even if I play very low, so we have a fundamental down at 30, we still have lots of overtone activity. So we can hear this thing higher up. Cool. All right. Let me see if I can, I'm going to use this instrument now on this beat, right? Let me just drop in this MIDI clip, see how it sounds. Yeah, this is working. All right. So anyway, that's pretty much it. You know, I know the back half of that I wasn't talking as much, but sometimes it's good to just watch somebody make stuff, watch somebody work. So yeah, this is one technique I use like all the time. I synthesize the 808 from scratch, kind of get the pitch, timing dialed in, you know, just how I like it. And then I will often splice in an acoustic or sampled kick just to beef this up. You don't have to do that. Like if you have like this is a good example, right? If this isn't really jiving with the kick in here, maybe you take that out, right? You know, so I mean, another thing you can do, right, is if say you have a kick that's kind of really, you know, taking over the low end, let's say, right, and you're getting some conflict between this spliced in kick and your 808. Here's another thing you can do, right? I'm sorry, I'm thinking of stuff as I kind of work, right? So what we're gonna do is you're gonna have your kick up front, and then for your 808, right, what we're going to do is go to the amplitude envelope, right? And instead of this 808 coming in right away with the kick, if that's too crowded, if it's not punchy, if it's muddy, right, you're going to make this kind of fade in a little bit later. We're going to actually delay the attack. So check this out. All right, we're just going to listen to only the 808. Hear how it's waiting if we delay this? So what we're going to do, let's delay this about 20 milliseconds. That composite might be cleaner for you, you know, depending on what you want. So now we have our kick, our spliced in kick, taking care of our transient, our attack up front, right? And then this fades in after it. And then I'm only gonna, let's go back to only distorting. Yeah. Oh, that sounds nice. Right? So this is kind of, I think this is a lot easier than like fixing this kind of problem in a mix where you have to like automate stuff or like chop out the front of the 808 to make room for the kick or side chaining shit, right? Like, I think it's a lot easier just to get the timing right from the start. If you're gonna have a kick that hits at the same time as your 808, right? And actually, I'm gonna put it together with this, and I'm gonna mute my kick just to see. Let me just disable these. Let's see how this all. Yeah, this is what you want, right? 808's a little loud, maybe. Yeah, and then from here you just adjust to taste, right? But this kind of approach is great, like I was saying, because you don't have to go back and finesse stuff in the mix to get your kick and your 808, right? They're already playing well together, you know, by just making this guy wait, right? So, you know, I would consider this like an 808 fundamentals kind of video. Just like what your baseline variables are, how to make the thing from scratch, how to get it kind of playing well with the rest of a drum kit and hitting hard and all that stuff. So if you have any further questions, you know, as far as other techniques or those kinds of things, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to do another one of these. This is kind of just scratching the surface of what's possible, but you could definitely keep going further. So yeah, let me know in the comments, questions. You know, if you're on social media, whatever, just look up Hot Wobble on Twitter and Instagram a lot lately. Starting to do a little TikTok video, but you know, whatever. And of course, please like, subscribe, take care of this video, because this will help it reach more people on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, thanks for watching. Make good beats. Peace out. All right.